Hamidakipi, my traditional native name is Woableza. It comes from the dialect of the Lakota speaking people of the northern plains of the United States, what is known today as the United States. It is also known long time ago that the people in North America were the people of the Confederation of the Eagle. And in the South, like South America, the people down that way, the people were known as the people from the Confederation of the Condor. So these two groups of confederations went on a journey of life and pathways for many, many, many generations, and learned how to live in harmony and balance by following the original instructions of the Creator. Along the way, there have been many levels of understanding or education for the people left behind, and they came in many forms, but one of the most pronounced forms was the way of the rock, or the eon, as we call it. When people wanted to leave some kind of knowledge that they gathered during their lifetimes for the betterment of the future generations, they would leave these writings left in something that would be like almost indelible. And so what they left them upon was the stone people. They did these carvings or paintings. The paintings, which were known as pictographs, the carvings were known as petroglyphs today, but they all lasted throughout many, many generations of people, so that the people of today could understand the reasonings of their grandmothers and grandfathers. To my understanding, the people of the North, the people of the Eagle, the Confederation of the Eagle, were more of a masculine mind, and the people of the South, the Confederation of the Condor, were more of a feminine way of thinking. And so, during my journeys of my life, I've gotten a chance to meet a great many of these wise teachers, grandmothers and grandfathers, who shared the stories of life, and they all always included and began with the stories of creation. And these stories of creation were to be told over and over again, so that at some time in the future, when the world was coming to a point where it had to change in order to survive, they would use these stories of creation to begin to understand what path they would take to walk their ways into the future. So, during my journey of life, I was really gifted to be able to meet many people with the original stories, the creation stories, and the stories of all aspects of life, the walks of the animals, the plants, the trees, the water, the clouds, the fire. All these have stories that all blend together to make one tremendous, beautiful story of life. And so in my journey, not too long ago, I was very interested in walking the path of an elder, Native American. And in order to do this, I would have to seek out and find out where the elders were gathering. And they began to gather more and more frequently as time was approaching, that we knew that there was going to be some sort of change once again upon Mother Earth. And so in my journeys to meet these wise elders, I listened very intently to their proclamations or their statements, which they gathered to send out to the people at the end of each of their gatherings. And the gatherings spoke of a time that once again the people of the eagle would once again meet with the people of the south, the people of the condor, and they would come together in the center, and it would be like bringing together the fingers of a large hand, and all the knowledge that was supposedly lost would all come together to help the people of today decide how to live in peace and in balance and with harmony and much love. And so this is the time that we're in now, and the prophecy of the eagle and the condor has come true. And many spiritual leaders of different tribes have brought it upon themselves to be the facilitators of some of these great gatherings. Early in the 90s, I was told that there would be a gathering about this eagle and condor confederation, and it would be in the 90s that the people would come together and teach the newer generations the true meanings of life. And so at a gathering held, I think it was about the second or third gathering of the confederations of the meetings of the eagle and the condor, that they decided to bring their message up north to North America. And a wise elder from the southwestern continent of what today is called the United States would call the people to meet in the canyon lands of New Mexico. And when we came, there was representatives from at least 500 different Indian nations throughout the Americas. The meetings that they had were very, very important, and they showed that we are not so much different, that we really all are quite alike, and that our needs are quite alike, and our beginnings are quite alike, and that our future path is quite alike. And that when we heard from the different speaking nations about their prophecies and their journeys of life, what was going on that was positive and what was going on that was negative, but yet it was all brought together to trying to find out a true path for the people to follow. They shared many wonderful things at this third gathering, which was held in 1999 in New Mexico. The people of one of the largest contingents in North America were the Dene people, and their spiritual leader was a very wise man who was brought up by his grandmothers and grandfathers, and he was taught about various institutions of life that we needed to hold on to, that things that were never to be forgotten, that were to be shared through oral history or oral tradition. And he told us that we needed to come first to the springs and learn about the sacred springs. And then he said we needed to go to the canyons and understand the great canyons of the lands in which many of our tribes lived and traveled and journeyed through and found ways of life. And then he also took us to the mountains and showed us the true value and meaning of the mountains. Now, in the central part of this gathering, when he took us to the Canyonlands, there were so many different tribes. They did not speak the same language, but they had their interpreters, their translators, and we had to stop quite a few times to understand what it was that each tribe was carrying, which gift they was bringing to the gathering. And so he allowed that time and had that patience for each one of the people attending to understand what he was trying to show them. And he showed them that there was a way of life that was written, how a grandmother or a group of grandmothers or mothers would come to a certain place and learn about how they would bring up their daughters or their granddaughters and show them all the steps in the 4 phases of life. And when we went to these places, we saw many drawings carved along the canyon walls of different animals, different peoples, different clouds, different elements like rain and fire, water, soil, corn, beans, squash, all these different foods that people use to live, and then how they would raise their crops and they would make their clothing, and how they would also get together and teach their children, especially the daughters or the granddaughters, how to live a full and productive life as being the mother of the people of a nation. And as we came to these drawings, one of these drawings was where the grandmothers would take their granddaughters and teach them about a way of life. And at this site we saw this huge drawing, and amongst many drawings of many women folk doing their daily duties throughout the 4 stages of life, we saw a big drawing of a man, what appeared to me a man, in the midst of all these feminine energies or teachings. And we were told that when this appeared, it appeared like 900 years before the day that we were brought to receive its teachings. And that throughout the 900 years when it first appeared, they took their time to be able to study it and to be able to translate or interpret it with the true wisdom that it carried. And so this big drawing of what appeared to be a man in the midst of women's duties was an object of teaching that had to be studied in various perceptions, that we had to look at life not only straight up and down, or not only in black and white colors, but we always had to study these things from a side angle view, a right angle view, left angle view, even an upside down view, so we could receive the full meaning of these great teachings left behind by our ancestors in the form of rock art. And when we came to this drawing and began to receive its teaching, in my way of life, of the Dakotas, of the Great Plains area, we were always taught to stop 4 times to pray, to sing, to offer a song, offer a gift, maybe of tobacco, whatever it is that original instructions told us to do. And so when I went there, I brought this song, and I gave this song, not knowing really fully what I was doing, but I offered this song. And the song that I sang was to the Great Spirit. And this is just one line of the song. Wakan Tonka Toka Heya Che Wakielo. Wakan Tonka Toka Heya Che Wakielo Hey. Midakuyeyo Wani Tacha Toka Heya Che Wakielo Heyo. And so that's the offering song that I gave. And everyone stopped and listened, from the delegations of over 500 nations that were there. And they wondered what I was doing. And they just knew that I was doing something in my traditional manner. And later on in the week, we were told by the leader that this profound petroglyph had finally been translated after 900 years. And what I come to find out in my journeys thereafter was that this was a great symbol, a great teaching of what was about to come, what the time that we were living in now, and how that time would help change things for the better. And what this great energy had was the grandmother energy. It was a teaching from the grandmothers who were very wise, who have borne many children, and their children have borne their grandchildren. And then how a grandmother and a mother's love is so strong that they would never let anything bad come to their children. And so that's what this drawing was all about, was how to return to the original instructions and for the grandmothers to lead us into the future with their wise teachings and their knowledges that they have gathered throughout their lifetimes. It is time once again for the grandmothers to stand up and speak, and that there would be many things in the near future that we would experience and see that would come to pass that would be very relevant to this drawing. As we first looked at the drawing, standing straight up and down, it appeared that this was a man. But the wise elder said, there's also something which you perceive as arms, but it's not arms. It's 2 great birds flying from different directions into one tall object. And that there's also many things going on the round formation in the bottom of the picture. and that it showed that it appears that there was a lot of heat or a lot of fires, like forest fires, that would be leading up to the time when the two birds would appear. So we knew that around that time, in the latter half of the 19th century, which we live now, that there was a lot of forest fires and that the world was getting hotter. And so we knew that there was something true and there was some kind of meaning about this. The next depiction had to do with those birds flying into this tall object, or what's today we found out is a building. These two birds, which today are known as aircrafts, were flying into a tall building, and they would crash and they would burn to the ground. So this would be another foretelling of an event that showed that the time of the grandmothers was coming, that the time of change was coming. And then they said there would be a person whose voice would raise up and would be heard around the world. And it showed this person had two arms raised up in prayer, like a great prayerful person of great importance upon Mother Earth. But one of his arms was healthy and straight, and his hand was healthy, and the other arm was crooked and bent, like there was something wrong with it. So the wise elder said, this means that this person was about to speak and send a message out to the world that would not be totally true, and that would the consequences of this untruth would be heard around the world. And so right after that, this person in this big hat and with a big collar and those two powerful praying arms was found out to be one of the popes of the Catholic Church. And that he would hear about all the children who had been sexually abused by some members of the church, and that he would send his voice around the world that this was to be known, but yet these men who did these abuses were not to be killed or severely punished, but something merely like a slap on the hand. And so right after that was spoken, something would happen to this tall building. And this tall building or monument would fall to the ground. And what that represented was the organization or the church that this man belonged to. That the Catholic Church would begin to be sued and lose a lot of its wealth and a lot of its monies. And it would take a long time for it to recover and rise back where the people trusted it once again. So this happens. This is another part in the prophecy of this writing. And then it showed, as we looked at it more carefully, that this tall building was actually in the form of a great missile or nuclear warhead. And this nuclear warhead would become powerful, and the people would start arguing, fighting the countries, and that there was a possibility that they may send this nuclear warhead armed at many countries, sent it to destroy. But it also showed that if this were to happen, that the things that would follow this nuclear explosion would be a lot of radioactivity that would get caught up in the clouds and fall down with the rain and burn animals and people and trees and pollute the rivers and all the plant life and the fish, if we will allow this to happen. And then he said that the great wise people looked at this again, and they said, well, it showed a big cloud, that clouds would carry different forms of radioactivity around the world. But people asked, how would we stop this? How would we prevent this? And they were told, the wise people were told to study it more and more. So they looked at it from the left side and the right side, and they turned it upside down. And finally, when they turned it upside down, they found the answer. And when they turned it upside down, they saw something very beautiful, very profound. It was a tree of life that was once again growing and flowing out of Mother Earth. And that this tree of life would bloom once again on Mother Earth. That a new world would be born once again by following the teachings and the instructions and the mandates of the grandmothers or the feminine. And that this great thing that was about to occur was going to happen, and that the masculine energy or the males of the world would need to step aside and support the words of the grandmothers so that they could be very powerful and strong, and their teachings would be well received around the world, so that once again we would not have any children harmed, but we would have children live and grow up to have happy lives and be surrounded with love and light. And so this is the great teachings of this writings on these rock walls, that a new way of life is coming, another beginning for a greater and bigger Mother Earth. And that people only need to listen to the grandmothers, the wise grandmothers, who already have all these things in place, have all the teachings. We just have to follow these instructions, and we have to keep on praying to our beautiful Mother Earth, and listen to her Father, the Father who many of us refer to as the Great Spirit, to his original instructions. And we will once again see a new era, a new world being born on Mother Earth, a beautiful and very powerful world, a world full of love, a world full of peace and happiness, and a new, stronger, and greater race of spiritual beings that all the universe would be looking at to follow their way that they have found. They're following this new light, this new path, as they did in the past, over maybe 4 major changes upon Mother Earth. We went through different changes, and every time something out of what might have been negative has always come the positive. And that's what we're waiting on. This new and bigger and better world that we're about to enter. and that we have everything that we need to utilize. The instructions are right here in front of us. They're right here on the ground, they're in the air, they're all around us. We just have to open our hearts and open our ears, open our minds, and return to the purity and sacredness of life. That's what this drawing is all about. So I thank you for taking the time to listen to me, to the teachings I am only passing on to all of you, the children and the people of Mother Earth. Oh, Midaki Oyasin.